Have you ever walked into a room and felt like someone made everything slow down? Not because they were attractive, not because they said anything special. They were just there. And somehow the whole space adjusted itself around them. People started speaking more quietly, moving more carefully, and no one dared to slack off. That's not luck, that's aura, an invisible force that truly powerful people carry with them. In this video, I'll show you how to build an aura so strong that you can command the room without even saying a word. No need to fake it, no need to act. Just understand how psychology works and know when to speak or stay silent. Stick around until the end, because everything will tie together right there. Part 1. Aura is a silent weapon, and that's exactly why it's dangerous. I once worked at a warehouse on the outskirts of Houston, where everyone referred to an old security guard as Silent Jeff. No one knew his real name, and no one had ever seen him smile. He never yelled, never barked into a walkie-talkie, or blew a whistle to assert authority. And yet, the moment Jeff appeared at the end of the hallway, a group of young workers joking loudly would suddenly go quiet, like they'd seen a ghost. Earbuds came off. Jackets were zipped. No one had to say a word. Jeff didn't need to give orders. His silence made people wary, because he didn't react the way most people do. You never knew what he was thinking, whether he was judging you or planning something else. And that not knowing was what made you uneasy. Not the fear of confrontation, but the fear of losing control. Jeff made people adjust their behavior not because he forced them to, but because no one wanted to screw up in front of him. That is the essence of aura. It doesn't come from volume, it comes from energy. Not the energy you display, but the kind you restrain within. Aura turns you into a mirror, reflecting back people's own insecurity. And when they feel exposed around you, they'll voluntarily play nice without you ever asking. In a world where everyone wants to prove themselves with words, the one who knows when to be silent is often the most dangerous. Not because they're better, but because they have nothing to prove. They let others project their own assumptions. And sometimes, those assumptions are scarier than the truth. Aura isn't something you wear like a jacket. It's something that builds from control. Control over your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. And once you master that, you won't need to speak much. You just walk in and let the room adjust to you. Part 2. You don't need to speak much, you just need to be felt. In an American open office workspace, where desks have no dividers, Zoom calls echo everywhere, and keyboard clicks sound like background music, you quickly notice something. Some people don't have to do anything special, but their mere presence makes others sit up straighter, lower their voices, and double-check their emails for typos. I once worked at a startup in Austin, where everyone had a freestyle vibe, t-shirts, flip-flops, and very casual language. But every time Mr. Lawrence, a seasoned product specialist from New York, walked into the room, the atmosphere cooled down. No one said it out loud, but people started straightening their backs, adjusting their chairs, and closing unnecessary YouTube tabs. Lawrence wasn't a manager. He didn't assert authority or lecture about professionalism. He simply showed up, and the room adjusted itself around him. Strong aura doesn't mean making people afraid of you. It means making them want to be better in your presence. Not because you demand it, but because they don't want to waste the chance to show their best side in front of you. That's influence without force. Influence that comes from inner value, from the way you stand, the way you quietly listen, the way you don't jump into every conversation, but people still wait for your nod before continuing. Aura is like a thermostat in a meeting room. You don't shout, "Everyone be quiet." You just stay calm, and the emotional temperature of the entire room lowers to match you. When you remain composed, others start wondering, why isn't he panicking? Does he know something we don't? And when people start feeling you rather than just hearing you, that's when you truly hold power. Not power that comes from title, but power that comes from presence. A presence that can't be bought, and definitely can't be faked. Part 3. An alpha doesn't hunt, the prey comes to him. It was a March afternoon in New York, chilly but not freezing. I was sitting in the corner of a Starbucks near Union Square, watching people come and go. A habit I picked up to unwind after work. Then he walked in. A tall black man dressed in a sharp black suit. No logos, no excessive accessories. He didn't carry a laptop like most others, nor was he glued to his phone. Just a thick hardcover book and a calm gaze, as if the chaos of the city outside had nothing to do with him. He chose the table by the window, ordered an espresso, and quietly read. He didn't look at anyone, didn't try to connect. But within that lack of effort, there was something strangely magnetic. I noticed at least 3 women walking by who turned their heads back to look. One of them dropped her bus pass right in the aisle, and even though she picked it up quickly, her eyes glanced at him again, as if hoping he'd lift his head. He didn't. And that made them even more curious. This wasn't arrogance, it was composure. The presence of someone who doesn't need attention to feel valuable, someone whose every gesture seemed deliberate, yet entirely natural. His aura didn't come from expensive clothes. It came from this. He didn't need anyone to validate him, and he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. A true alpha doesn't walk into a room to say, "Look at me." He walks in as if he already knows that being there is enough. And that sense of enoughness is what makes others want to come closer. When you don't try to grab attention, people end up watching you longer, trying to figure you out. And the less they understand, the more they're drawn in. Aura isn't action. It's a state of being. The state of someone who doesn't go hunting, yet causes the entire forest to shift in his direction. Part 4. The one who shows up too often loses their charm. In the hyper-competitive dating world of Los Angeles, where everyone has too many options and too little patience, what makes someone attractive isn't their constant availability. On the contrary, the one who always shows up, texts non-stop, replies within 10 seconds, and is always there for you, is often the one easiest to forget, because they leave no space. And without space, there's no imagination. Without imagination, there's no emotional spark. I once heard a girl say after a first date, "He's really nice," replies instantly, "but he seems kind of predictable." That predictable didn't mean he was boring. It meant he was always there. There was nothing to wait for. Nothing to wonder about. Everything was explained, confirmed, expressed so clearly that there was no room left to dream. And when there's no more dreaming, attraction slowly fades away. On the other hand, someone who knows how to withdraw at the right moment, not out of coldness but out of finesse, becomes the center of attention. They don't text every morning. They don't ask, "Did you eat yet?" every night. But when they do appear, it feels like discovering a great song in a boring playlist. And when they disappear again, you replay that song in your mind, asking yourself, what's he doing now? Is he with someone else? Is he just busy? Did I miss something? That intentional pause activates the other person's mind. It makes them start writing the rest of the story. And in that self-written narrative, they become more invested in you than they would have been had you tried to tell them everything. Controlling how often you appear is a form of controlling desire. Not to manipulate, but to create space. Someone who's always present is convenient. Someone who appears occasionally, at the right time, in the right way, is unforgettable. And in a world full of noise like Los Angeles, sometimes what makes people remember you is the silence you leave behind when you're gone. Part 5. When everyone panics, the one who stays silent becomes the leader. Panic has a very distinct sound. It's not screaming, but the chaos of overlapping voices, hurried footsteps, and eyes darting around looking for someone to blame. That was the scene one afternoon at a tech company in Silicon Valley when the main system suffered a critical failure. The servers stopped responding, customers started complaining, and the countdown to recovery began ticking. The entire tech team felt trapped in a maze, some trying to debug the code, others making frantic calls, someone repeatedly refreshing the dashboard like they were praying. Amid all that turmoil, there was one person who didn't move, Linda, the lead engineer. She didn't yell, didn't rush to check anything. She just sat still, eyes on the screen, hands not even touching the keyboard. A few glanced at her, hoping she'd say something. But she didn't. And strangely, that silence didn't make people uneasy. It made them wait. Linda's silence wasn't helplessness. It was a necessary pause to see the whole picture while everyone else was glued to the details. In the world of programming, where every issue has logic behind it, the one who keeps a clear head is the one who sees the solution first, and after exactly 3 minutes, a stretch that felt like eternity in the chaos, Linda spoke calmly and steadily. Roll back to last stable version. Now. No one questioned her. No one added anything. They followed. And the system stabilized a few minutes later. No applause, no thanks needed. Just quiet. The kind that comes after a right decision made at the right time. Linda didn't need to prove authority. She demonstrated authority through calm. While everyone else was swept away by emotion, she stood still like a marker. And that's exactly what made her the real leader. Because in a crisis, the one who doesn't get carried away is the one others follow. Part 6. A true leader doesn't need to command. They only need to be present. Some people make you feel like you're missing something valuable simply because you're not near them. A kind of presence that isn't loud or controlling, but carries immense weight. I once took a political philosophy class at Yale, taught by an elderly professor named Joseph, though students only called him the Room. Not because he owned the classroom, but because his presence was the room. He never took attendance, never gave pop quizzes, not even reminders, and yet every session was packed. Students came early, fought for front seats, prepared their notebooks carefully, as if they were about to hear something that couldn't be found in books. The reason wasn't that he lectured like a showman. It was that his presence changed the atmosphere. When he walked in, the entire class seemed to hush, automatically. He moved slowly, set his bag down, didn't rush, but every small movement made people pay attention. No one wanted to miss the moment he paused to think or simply looked out the window. Because in that pause, you never knew what he might say next. And that anticipation was addictive. One day he was absent due to illness. No prior notice. The class sat waiting for 40 minutes without leaving. Not because they feared losing points, but because they hoped that even if he arrived late, even if only for a moment, that day would still be worthwhile. And when he didn't come, one student whispered, "Today feels like opening a book and finding the final chapter missing." That's the pinnacle of influence. When you don't need to demand, command, or impose, your presence alone makes others want to be better. And when you're not there, they don't just feel absence, they feel loss. That's when you're no longer just a person. You've become a standard. And a true standard doesn't have to shout. It only has to exist. Conclusion. In a world where everyone's fighting to be seen, heard, and acknowledged, the truly respected person is the one who doesn't need to push through the crowd. They choose silence, but that silence carries weight. They don't need to react quickly or argue loudly, because their calm already makes others reflect. Aura doesn't need explanation. It's the feeling you leave behind after you exit the room. Be that person, the one who changes the atmosphere just by showing up, the one whose absence raises questions, the one whose silence echoes louder than any speech. Thank you for watching till the end. See you in the next video.